Knows Mike. He's worked with Carol for a very long time. He shared with me a story about his father, who was a World War II veteran. And recently, this story came to Mike via his mother. I believe she's, 98, Mike?
Yep.
So this was really touching. When I received this email about the story, I knew that I wanted to share this with everybody. And again, this is from Mike Wall, and it was about his father, who was a Baltic gunner in 1945. He flew in a B-17. And this is what he wrote, and his name was Edward Wall. From boyhood to manhood. Suppose one morning, around the end of August, we should awake to find the ground covered with snow, and the icy wind of winter roaring a song of death at all the green of summer. It is true that man and nature would survive this dramatic and sudden change, but the scars would be terrible and a long time healing. And so it is. A change from carefree autumn of gradual maturing can have its evil effects. I made that transition in 5 months. The years that followed my graduation from high school in 1938 and led up to these fateful months were happy, that much I know. Although, looking back, it is difficult to follow the thought process I had then. There were parties, sports, girls, drinking, and always the striving to be like the big fellows. The world was one big playground, and I used all the swings and sandboxes. Then the little yellow men who couldn't even beat the Chinese took our scrap metal and converted it into a mighty, timely blow at the great United States. This underhanded act sent me into Fort Meade, where I announced that I wanted to drive a tank. They put me in the Air Corps, and I loved it. The next few months were busy ones. Basic and aerial gunnery training culminated in me joining the most exclusive club in the world, the combat crew of a B-17 bomber. Our training took us all over the western United States. Great rugged ranges of mountains, the fantastic reds of a Nevada sunset, and the vast empty wilderness of Montana. These were the backdrops for the colorful stage in which we worked. New towns, new people, exciting experiences made the stew of life very savory indeed. Finally, we received our orders to go overseas. This, to me, was just the start of another adventure. We flew B-17s down to South America, across the Atlantic to Africa, and up to England. The change, within a few hours from the savage heat of the African desert to the cool green serenity of England in April, is a thrilling experience. Our group nestled down in the rolling hills of Kensington County, and life moved on at an uneventful pace, while waiting our order for combat. One day, this peace was rent by an earth-shaking roar. I leaped from my bunk and ran half a mile to the airfield. When I arrived there, a chaotic scene met my eye. A great smoking crater surrounded by flaming airplane parts. Trucks, jeeps, ambulances, and all kinds of vehicles passed me filled with wounded, bleeding men. I soon found out that 5 bombers had blown up, killing or injuring all the men in the vicinity. Amid all of the horror, 2 men bearing a stretcher walked past me, carrying a blanket-covered body. All I could see protruding was the big, clumsy, half-laced army shoes. These shoes jarred me out of my feeling of security, and for the first time began to feel an uneasy dread. Shortly afterward, I went on my first mission, which was merely an exciting episode. It provided a confused medley of black and gray shapes attacking in all directions, which ended as quickly as it began, leaving me with a letdown feeling. It wasn't until my 5th mission that we met real opposition. There in the cold air, 5 miles over Kiel, Germany, we ran into a terrible ambush, which practically annihilated our formation. On that mission, my turret jammed and my feet froze as I sat helplessly watching the enemy tear our group to pieces and waited for our turn to come next. However, somehow, some way, we fought our way back to the base, and I was sent to the hospital. By now I had known the meaning of fear, and the war was stripped of its glamour. About my 12th mission, I took stock and found that there were only a handful of the original men left, which led me to believe that I had very little chance of completing my tour of 25 bombing trips. However, by this time, I had adapted a fatalistic attitude. In addition, I carefully stifled my imagination to the point that when a plane load of my comrades was shot down in flames, I merely saw a plane go down in flames. It bothered me very little. This lack of imagination was sort of a substitute for courage, and in my opinion, kept a man from breaking down. Where to my amazement, I actually did finish my last mission, the 25th. I had become a good combat soldier, cold, efficient, and utterly devoid of feeling. After the completion of my tour, I was shipped to another base to train newly arrived gunners. Now I had time to think and take stock of my character. On the good side, I was confident, self-reliant, ready, and able to assume responsibility. The other half of the page was rather black. I had become brutal and callous in speech and manner. The feelings and lives of men around me meant nothing to me. An editorial comment: after the war, Mike's father went on to college and become a high school history teacher. He and his wife raised 8 beautiful children, and they never heard their father speak or act in any way negative from what he experienced. And I think that's true for a lot of people who experience combat. There's so much heartbreak, there is so much loss, not only of life, of limb, of friendships, of bonds that we can't even speak of, that there becomes a little bit of a callousness so that there's no more heartbreak. You know, the older veterans, they look at the young ones, in a way that says, I don't want to be hurt anymore. I want to help you, but at the same time, I don't want to be close with you because I don't want to hurt again. And so we see this kind of graduation from the boyhood to manhood, and also from the rookie to the older elder veteran, especially for those who've experienced combat. And I was talking with Mike how there's a difference between post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic stress disorder. I believe, Mike had shared his father never showed any signs of this negativity that he felt at the end. And I said, well, perhaps in him writing this, and him expressing this, and him getting his story out, helped him heal. A lot of people bottle things up, and when they bottle things up, it becomes festered wounds that kind of infect everything else in our lives. And so I think it's very important to help share these stories of service. And so for the young ones, I want to ask you, to get to know people that are veterans in your lives and ask to hear their stories. And be prepared, though, the stories are not always easy to hear. That's because what they went through was not easy. It was also very difficult in many ways. It was very trying in terms of being a human being and to do and to feel the experience that people in war have to do and feel and experience. So thank you guys very much. I'm really excited to introduce Peyton Peluso. Peyton is a senior with the